Hi guys, welcome back to Quad Maths. Today we'll be looking at forming and solving equations. Here are two GCSE type questions for you to recap. Please pause the video, work the questions, and then when you're through, please continue the video to see the solutions. Question number 1 asks us to solve for the value of y. These are the responses that we should have for question number 1, y is equal to 20, and for question number 2, x is equal to 1.2 kilograms. Now, if we look more in depth at question number 2, this section is very important. The two small tins each have the same mass. So because the question tells us that, then we can therefore let x represent the mass of the two tins. So if there are two small tins, then it is x plus x, which is where we get this 2x from. Then we add that to 2.6, and that is equal to the weight that we see on our scale on this side, which is 5. After we've equated, we just solve for x. Excellent. Now let's look at forming the expressions ourselves. Enoch is 5 meters shorter than Alex. Jack is double the height of Alex. Their combined height is 35 meters. Find the Alex's height. Now the first thing we need to do is use the word let to define our variables. Now the variable that occurs most and the one that all other names are being associated with is Alex. And we therefore need to let x be Alex's height. Then after we've done that, we can make some clear and more concise narratives. So Enoch is 5 centimeters shorter than Alex. Because he is 5 cm shorter than Alex, then we can therefore use the algebraic expression x minus 5 to represent this. And then because we know that Jack is double the height of Alex, then we can just double Alex's height. So Jack's height now becomes 2x. Once we have cleared up those parameters, we can now go ahead and solve because we know from the question that their combined height is 35 meters, and the word combined there is very important. That can be likened to addition in mathematics. So after we've done that, we can therefore say that x plus x minus 5 plus 2x is equal to 35. We must recall that x is Alex's height, x minus 5 is Enoch's height, and 2x is Jack's height. And the combination or the sum of all three is equivalent to 35. Once we have done that, we can therefore now solve for x. So therefore, Alex's height is 10 meters. And it's important to remember, students, that we must always be precise. So meters, or the unit that we're working with, is very important. All right. Now let's look at some more examples. After tennis training, Andy collects twice as many balls as Roger and 5 more than Maria. They collect 35 balls in total. How many balls does Andy collect? The first thing we need to look at are the parameters that we have working with. So we're going to let x be the number of balls Roger collects. And therefore, once we have done that, we can now go ahead and form more different parameters. So Andy collects twice as many balls as Roger. So twice as many as Roger would be 2x. And then Maria, we know that she would collect 2x minus 5. Why is it minus 5? Minus 5 because Andy gets 5 more than Maria. So if we know that Andy is 2x, then Maria would be 2x minus 5, because even though Andy gets 5 more, Maria would get 5 less than Andy's total. Then after we've done that, we can now form an equation. So we have x plus 2x minus 5 is equal to 35, because remember the question tells us that they collect 35 balls in total. So X would be Roger's total, 2X is Andy, and 2X minus 5 is Maria's total. And that's equal to 35, and then we therefore solve for X. So we know X is equal to 8 balls. But remember that Andy, his expression is 2X. So whatever the value for X is, Andy's total is 2 times that. So if X is 8, Andy collects 2 times 8, which is 16 balls. All right, let's move on to the other question. In a list of 7 consecutive numbers, a quarter of the smallest number is 5 less than a third of the largest number. What is the value of the smallest number in the list? Now, the first thing we need to do here is to list out our parameters. Now, we know we're going to use an unknown value, maybe X. We can use X, generally it's X. But the first thing we can do before that is to just underline all the key bits of information that we need. So the first thing the question tells us that there's a list of 7 consecutive numbers. And the word consecutive is important, so we need to note what that means. Consecutive means they fall one after the other. So consecutive numbers include 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the question also states a quarter of the smallest number is 5 less than a third of the largest number. So those parameters are important to note. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to let X be equal to the smallest number. So if we started out with X, so X is the smallest number. The one that comes after that would be X plus 1, X plus 2, X plus 3, X plus 4, X plus 5, and X plus 6. And the reason why we stopped at X plus 6 is because we want 7 consecutive numbers. So X is the first, X plus 1 is the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. So it's important to note that it says a list of 7 consecutive numbers. Then we're told that a quarter of the smallest number. So the smallest number here would be X. So a quarter of X is equal to 5 less than a third of the largest number. The largest number here is X plus 6. So we first find a third of X plus 6, and then we subtract 5 from it because the question says 5 less than a third of the largest number. And we know that these are equivalent. So we can now therefore write an equivalent equation. So a quarter X is equal to a third X plus 2 minus 5. It's important to note that here, where we have a third bracket X plus 6, we need to apply our distributive law. So a third times X is a third X. And a third times 6 is plus 2. So we have that. And then what we do is solve for X, just like we did before. So we get all the X's on one side and we get all the numbers on the other side. All right, so we have that. So this should therefore round down to X being equal to 36. So the smallest number is 36. Now here are some questions to test your understanding. So pause the video, work the questions, and then just play the video to see if you got the questions correct. Question number 1. The length of the rectangle is 3 times the width. The perimeter is 56 meters. Determine its width. Now it's important that we are able to underline some key bits of information from our question. So we're told that the length of the rectangle is 3 times the width. We also know that the total perimeter is 56 meters. Those are very important, and we're finding what the value of the width is. Now, because we have those bits of information, we can now let X be equal to the width of the rectangle. So we now know that X is equal to the width of the rectangle. So therefore, the length is 3 times the width. So it is therefore 3x. And we therefore know that for the perimeter, we add all the distances around our rectangle. So we know we'd have an X 2 times because remember in rectangles, opposite lengths are equivalent. And then we have 3x twice as well. So we know x plus 3x plus x plus 3x should be equal to the total perimeter, which is 56 meters. Therefore, we know that x plus 3x plus x plus 3x is 8x. 8x is equal to 56. Therefore, x is equal to 7. And please remember our units. So we know that the width is 7 meters. Now let's look at question number 2. In 4 years' time, I will be 3 times as old as I was 10 years ago. How old am I? So from here, we can therefore let A be equal to my age. So if A is equal to the age, then in 4 years' time, I will be 3 times as old as I was 10 years ago. So we know that in 4 years' time, your age would be your current age, which is A plus 4. And we know that I was 10 years ago, so your age 10 years ago would be A minus 10. That's your age 10 years ago. And your age in 4 years' time is 3 times your age 10 years ago. So if your age 10 years ago is A minus 10, then 3 times that would be your age being 3 times as old. So therefore, we know that A plus 4 is equal to 3A minus 30, distributive law. Again, once we have brackets, 3 times A is 3A, and 3 times a negative 10 is negative 30. Then once we have that, we solve for A, so we know that A is 17. Very, very important. Now here we're going to look at some more in-depth questions. Here we're looking at a triangle, and we're going to incorporate or link the two aspects in math, angles, as well as what we've been doing so far, which is solving equations. So when we look at this, we know that this shape is a triangle. Now, something that I want to point out is that angles in a triangle, they always add up to 180. So hence, we can therefore note that the sum of angles in a triangle is always 180, and that's just a given. So once we have that, we can now write two expressions. So we know that the angles in this triangle right here is x plus 10 degrees, 2x, and x minus 50. So therefore, we know that if we know that the sum of angles is 180, we can now add all the angles we underlined above. So x plus 10 plus 2x plus x minus 50. And that should be equal to the total sum, which we know is 180. Once we've done that, we can therefore now solve for x. So x is equal to 55 degrees. And this right here is just the value for x. Just the value for x. If the question asks you to state the angles within that triangle, you're going to have to replace x with 55 in each of the angles and then solve. So if we replace the x here with 55, we know that this would therefore be 65 degrees. So the angle at this section right here would be 65 degrees. Same here, we'd replace x with 55, so we'd find that angle. Replace x with 55, so we'd find this angle right here. Now let's look at another example. The diagram shows a triangle. Side XY is of length 11b, side XZ is of length 2a plus 3b, and side YZ is of length a. The triangle is isosceles. That word is very, very important. With XY being equal to XZ. The perimeter of the triangle is 91. This is also important. Use algebra to find the values of A and B. All right, so we know a lot of things based on this. The first thing we need to do is to understand what an isosceles triangle means. An isosceles triangle is a triangle where two sides and two angles are equivalent, and these are generally the base angles. So the base angles, length as well, are always equivalent. So this length here is equivalent to this length, and this angle is equivalent to this angle. Very important. So based on that knowledge, we can equate 11b to 2a plus 3b. So that's what we've done right here. Then after we've done that, we can simplify. So since we know that 11b is equal to 2a plus 3b, we can therefore form a final equation where a is equal to 4b. Very important. So we've done that. Now we know that the perimeter is the total distance around. Because we know perimeter is total distance around, we're going to add everything. So we know 11b plus 2a plus 3b plus a is equal to 91. We know that because we added all the distances around. Now, when we had equated the two lengths that are equal, we found a value for a, and that value for a is in terms of b. So anywhere in this equation we see a, we can replace it with 4b because it is equal to 4b. So once we have done that, 14b plus 3 times 4b, because a now becomes 4b, that is equal to 91. Then we can solve 14b plus 12b because 4 times 3b, or 3 times 4b, is equal to 12b, and that is equal to 91. So b is 3.5. Then all we need to do, we can put back b as 3.5 into any one of our equations. I will use the one that we have right here since that is easier to utilize, this one right here. So once we have done that, we know that b is equal to 3.5. So anywhere we see b, we can now replace it with 3.5 and then solve for a. So we now know that a is 14 and b is 3.5. Now let's look at this question. This question is fairly simple. I just found it quite intriguing because generally when we're working with equations, we're given a lot of x and y's and variables. Here we're working with diagrams. So we're told that 2 boxes balance 1 can and 2 cans balance 1 bottle. So I want you to try these questions on your own. So pause the video, try each of the questions, and then play the video to see if you got them correct. All right, so let's get the questions. For part A, we're asked how many boxes makes each of these balance. So we have 1 bottle right here, so that would be equivalent to 4 boxes. We have 2 cans and 1 box, that is equivalent to 5 boxes. We have a bottle and a can, 6 boxes. And then for question D, or part D of the question, we need to make the scale balance by putting all these shapes on it. So we need to put 2 boxes, 1 can and a bottle on either side to make it balanced. So in this case, all we need to have is 2 boxes, 1 can on one side, and then a large bottle on the other side. Important to note that, remember, 2 of these boxes are equivalent to 1 can, and we know that from the beginning 2 cans balance to give you a bottle. All right, so I know that was fairly easy for most of us. Now let's take it a step further. When we look at this question, it tells us that the rectangle and triangle have the same area, and we're asked to determine the width of the rectangle. Now I know based on previous knowledge, we know how to find the area for rectangle. Some of us might not be able to find the area for triangle, but I've placed a hint here. So area of triangle is equal to half base times height. So that's important. And we're going to look at these and other shapes more in depth in our second or third video. Now, when we look at it, we know this, that the area for triangle is half base times height, and we know the area for rectangle is length times width. So based on that, we can find the area of the rectangle. So we know it is 3 times x plus 4, and all we need to do is apply our distributive law. So 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times 4 is 12. So the area of the rectangle is 3x plus 12. Excellent. Now we can go ahead and find the area of the triangle. And this is very simple, guys. In this case, the base is this length right here, which is 10. So that's always the side which your triangle is sitting on. So the triangle sits on this side, which is 10, has a length 10, so that's our base. And the height is that vertical line that always comes from our base. So that height is x. So half times 10 times x, a half of 10 is 5, so it is 5x. Once we have that, we can therefore go ahead and start equating our values. So we now know that the area of the rectangle, which is 3 times x plus 4, is equal to the area of the triangle, which we have simplified to 5x. Very important. So we have that. Now we can go ahead and solve because we know that 3 bracket x plus 4 simplifies to 3x plus 12, and that is equal to 5x. Get all the x's on one side and all our numbers or constants on the other. So therefore we know that x is equal to 6. Once we know that x is equal to 6, we can now determine the width of our triangle. The width of our triangle in this case, x plus 4. So the width is x, which is 6, plus 4, which is 10. So therefore, the width of our triangle is 10. Now let's look at the other examples. Now for this diagram, we should realize that this, and I've highlighted the word, this is called a quadrilateral. Quadrilateral, any four-sided figure, closed figure at that, we call it a quadrilateral. And when we look at it, all four-sided figures, their sum of their angles is always equal to 360 degrees. Why? Because all quadrilaterals are made up of two triangles, and if we know that one triangle has a sum of 180, then two triangles would be 2 times 180, which is equal to 360. So we have that. After we've identified that, we can now go ahead and form the expression. So the total angles in our quadrilateral should be equal to the sum of angles, which we know is 360. Once we have that, we solve for x. So now we know that x is 30 degrees. Then moving on to the next question. The area of the triangle is 1 more than the area of the parallelogram. Determine x. Now the parallelogram we have here looks similar to a rectangle. A parallelogram is a form or a type of quadrilateral, four-sided figure. Same area or the same formula for the area of a rectangle is also the same formula for the area of our parallelogram. So in this case, we know that the area of the parallelogram is equal to the area of the triangle. And we know that the area of the triangle is 1 more than the area of the parallelogram. So the area of the parallelogram in this case is equivalent to 5 times x plus 4. Remember, 5 is our length, we can call it our length, and x plus 4 is our width. Or we can call it length times height, same thing. So we have that, and we know that the area of the triangle, which we know is half base times height, so a half of 12 is 6 times the height, which is x. That's how we have our 6x here working with. And we know that the area of the parallelogram is 5 times x plus 4, but we know the area of the triangle is 1 more than that, so we have to add 1 to it. Then once we have that, we equate. We know that 5 times x plus 4 is equal to 5x plus 20. So that's how we have this right here. So 5x plus 20 plus 1 is equal to 6x. Then we solve for x. So we know that x is equal to 21. So based on what we have just done, we can complete these two exercises. So the first one, we know we're asked to find the value of x. The value of x, we're going to look at the largest triangle because there are a lot of triangles in this question. So we're going to look at the largest triangle, which is this one right here. And we know that the sum of angles in a triangle is equivalent to 180 degrees. So we're going to add 40 degrees plus 2x degrees plus the sum of 32 degrees and x degrees, and that is equal to 180. And then all we do, we solve for x. So x is equal to 36 degrees. Then for question number 10, we note that there are a lot of triangles as we've seen before. And these lines that we see here, those represents the sides of our triangles that are actually equal or equivalent. So we're going to look at the largest triangle that we have, which is this one right here. And in this triangle, we know that this side is equal to the opposite side over here. So that means the base angles are also equivalent. So if this angle is 9x, this angle right here is also 9x. So if here is 7x, the other angle down here is equal to 2x because it should add to 9x. So we have that, 7x and 2x. So now we can go ahead and we can find our value for x. So based on that, we know that 9x plus 9x plus 2x is equal to 180. And then we solve for x. So we know x is equal to 9. Very important as well to note that we have this small triangle right here working with it as well, this one. And based off of that, that's how we found the angle at C. So we know that these two sides are equal. Once those two sides are equal, these two angles are equal as well. So if this side is 9x, this side is 9x as well. Very important. All right, so 9x plus 9x plus 2x. That's how we got it. Still a triangle, and the sum of angles are still equal to 180. All right, so here are the final exercises that I want you to complete on your own. So you're going to pause the video, complete all questions, and then play the video to check if you got your answers correct. Now, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Please remember to like, share, thumbs up, and also subscribe. And if you have any issues regarding any of the questions here, please leave a comment in the comment section so I can respond to it. Bye!